Hey guys, welcome back, Fast Monty's Garage. Today's a fun one. Like, I guess they're all fun, but today we're going to marry the rods to the pistons and hopefully install them in the block. If you're new here, welcome. Go check out that video right there. I had to take apart the engine because of low oil pressure, found out the bearings were toast, had to get the crank reground, rebalanced, remachine the block, clean the block, paint the block, blueprint the bearings, install the crank, and now we're installing the pistons. It's getting fun now. And this is applicable to any engine. I don't care what engine it is. All engines work the same, so you can use the same techniques. So subscribe if you haven't, because you're going to follow along in the fun and put it back in the beast and just have a blast. Now, the next step here is I got to show you these pistons I got from Butler Performance. They're forged. They're badass. Check this out. No, this is not the new piston. I'm reminding you guys of the old piston. Remember, we chipped it? And then I had all this scoring. The cylinder walls were scored, so I had to get the block machine. That means I needed to get bigger pistons. So that's garbage. Check this out. Oh my God. This thing is awesome. It's a piece of art. I just feel like I need to put it on my desk as my new fidget spinner. I'll just play with it all day and not get any work done. Anyway, check out what's in there. You see that? It says Butler Ross. Co-designed forged aluminum piston. This is badass. So, man, you save a ton of weight with these. The rod pin, it's actually a slip fit, so it goes right through. You don't have to press it in, which is awesome. We'll cover that in a little bit. But man, this is co-designed. Look at this craftsmanship on this thing. This is awesome. So those of you wondering, this is a 4.191 inches in diameter. The cylinders are 4.195. You do the math with a 4.25 inch stroke. This is now 469.96 cubic inches. Yeehaw! All right, so here's what we're going to do, guys. The Ross Racing pistons, they actually come individually weighed. Sorry, excuse my terminology, but each one is weighed. And I took the whole rotating assembly to my machinist to have the whole thing balanced. The crank, the rods, the pistons, all those rings, the pins, the flywheel, the balancer, they balance the whole thing assembled. Now on the bottom of these pistons, you have a letter, G. I just randomly picked this out of the box, but it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, number 7. So we're going with number 7. Remember, I marked these when we did our blueprinting. Bearings still in there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the block, and I'm going to show you how to orient or determine which way this goes. Because some of you have the piston end may not be symmetric like this. So this one's symmetric. It doesn't matter which way I put it. But this end is a big difference. You notice there's one end that has a big chamfer. It's also off-center. So I'm going to show you in the block what that means. All right, guys, remember when we did our blueprinting of our rod bearings, and I numbered them 1 through 8, just to be easy, from front to rear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here's number 7, rod journal. And remember, when we did our blueprinting, we talked about this chamfer. So the bearing is chamfered, and the rod is chamfered on one side. The other side is not. It's straight. This chamfered side goes towards the radius on the crank journal. Let me show you a different angle. Now, having said that, when you line up your rod, so we have our chamfered edge against this wall, notice the cylinder back there is perfectly lined up with the rod axis. This is the cylinder this number 7 goes in. In reality, in Pontiac land, this is the number 8 cylinder. So don't get that confused. You want to do it by lining it up like that. So this goes right dead center down that cylinder. Now we know where the piston goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on the top of this rod. That's up for me for doing my assembly work. And we take our piston, we look at it. There's a definite up or down on this one. So this actually points up when it's right side up in the engine. But right now we want it down because it's in that cylinder. It's got to be pointing down. So I am also going to make a mark here so we can line up our marks during assembly. Let's go back to the bench. Now, before we start this process, I want you guys to take your time and do one pair rod and piston at a time so things don't get confusing. Now the kit comes with these, what they're called spiral locks. It's actually a lock ring that holds our rod pin in place. It looks like this. It's a spring, basically. And the way you install these is you pull these apart. So you stretch it out about a little 1.5 inches, and it'll come back and it looks like that. It's exactly how you want it to put it in. Otherwise it's going to be really hard. So stretch it out a little bit. This does a couple things. This also adds an axial preload for the pin. So the pin's on one side, the piston's on the other. It's holding the pin in place. And we do 2 per side. So there's 2 on this side. See the little ring? And then there's 2 on this side with the pin in the middle. So go ahead while you're at this point and expand all of your spiral locks. All right. So this is the groove we're after, this ring groove, this first groove. The second groove is for oiling, so don't go that far. But we're going to attack this first groove, and we have to put 2 spiral locks in. So like I mentioned, you separate them like that. And where they're separated actually needs to point up. So this, they call it the 6 o'clock position. The piston's upside down right now. So what you're going to do is try and start it about right there, and then you can use your fingernail and push it in, and you can hear it engaging. If that gets old, because you have to do 32 of those, take a small screwdriver and be very careful not to scratch the aluminum. You can start pushing it in all the way around like that. And you hear it snap in. Easy peasy. So put the second one in, and then we'll get to our assembly lube for the pin and do the other side. All right, guys, I mentioned you need 32 of these. Count them when you get them. Make sure you have 32. And the other reason I like to lay out one piston set at a time is if you walk away and you forget how many you put in, you need 2 per side. So make sure you keep your work area clean, organized, because if you forget, like I said, you go take a nap, then you come back and go, and you have a pile of these, you don't remember, it's very hard to see these once they're installed. So you can see there's 2 installed here. Now I'm going to take my assembly lube. I love this stuff. It's super sticky. And we're going to coat our... Oh, totally forgot to mention, guys. When you get these, clean them. So I used dish soap and hot water. I scrubbed them down just to get all the any machining goop off them. Same with these. You can use brake cleaner on these if you want. But now we're going to go ahead and assemble it. So remember our marks we made. So there's our top mark. And then the piston had the same top mark. We're going to marry the 2. And it's a slip fit, so they should go right together. Just like that. Bam. You can wipe off the excess now if you want, or wait till you put your next set of rings in. But now that our rings are ready to go, we go ahead and do the same procedure we did on the other side. You can hear it snap in. The second one's a little bit more difficult, and you might need your fingernail saver tool. Just make sure it gets a good start, that you're in front of the other ring. Don't get your glove caught like I just did. And the final snap in, let's listen for it. You guys hear that snap in? That's how you know you're fully engaged. So we're done. Notice the number came off. That's why I like to use the letters. Because if the number comes off, I can now rely on that engraving. G is number 7. So good. I'm going to put it back in put it back in the box, and do all the other pistons. All right, before we get to ring filing and all that jazz, we need to test my bearing clearance, because we measured it during the rod bearing blueprinting episode, but I have not Plastigaged it yet. So now's the time to do it before we ring it, ring the pistons. You can do it after you ring the pistons. I'm just choosing to do it now. So what this is, if you don't know what it is a piece of plastic that smashes when you compress it, and it determines how much gap you have. So the green one is 1 to 3 thou, and the red is 2 to 6. So I'm going to cut a piece with my scissors. There's a filament inside, and then I'm going to lay it down. Then I'm going to put the rod on with the cap, torque it down, then take it off, and we'll see what ends up with our smashed plastic. All right, so there's my Plastigage. My tricky part is going to be putting the piston in upside down with no rings in it. It's going to want to fall out. So I'm going to monkey with that and try and keep that Plastigage in the same spot. But I'm going to bolt it together and then torque it down, 63 foot-pounds on my rods, and then take it apart and see what it looks like. All right, here we go. Let's see what happened. All right, we got our marks. Marks are also on the bearing. Let me grab my measurement tool. So here's the measurement tool for the green one, and you can see it's different. It's 0 to 3 thou. A little over 2. It's actually kind of what we measured. It's not 3. It's not less than 2. That's on the green one. Here's a better visual if you can see it. See that it's a little less than that 2, but it's not as big as a 3. That means it's 2.5, which was our measurement. That's awesome. So on here, with the red one, you can see it's not quite 2, and it's fatter than 3. So in between, law of deduction, it's 2.5. And that's what we measured in our blueprinting process. Sweet. That means all of them are going to be the same, because I did it the same process for all of them. Now we can move to the next step and file our rings. Hey guys, I'm going to end this video right here because we still have a lot to do and running out of time. So that's how you marry your pistons to your rods. Next episode, we're going to do the ring filing and install on the crank. And those of you that are wondering, why did I do Plastigage at this point and not earlier when we did the bearing sizing? Well, very simple. I was not comfortable with torquing down the rod caps when the crank was sitting on the bench or not buttoned down in the block. I waited until the crank was in the block so then we can properly apply the torque to the rod bearings and not hurt anything. That was just my preference. Doesn't matter if you're comfortable with doing it on your workbench, go for it. I was not. Anyway, next episode, we got to do ring filing, install on the block, and that's when the fun begins, because then we're past the toughest hurdle of the whole build. So thanks for hanging out. Until next time, build them fast, drive them faster. See ya.